A text from Dad arrived while I was in the middle of training 20 teenagers for their first gaming tournament. My phone buzzed with a message, "Family announcement this weekend. Your presence is mandatory." My name is Anna Grace, and with just one message, my week was completely upended. It had been months since I last went home, ever since the disastrous family dinner where my stepmother, Linda, spent the entire evening boasting about my half-sister, Dawn, and her latest accomplishments, while completely ignoring mine. "Coach! The server's down again," shouted Lucas, one of the players on my team, waving frantically from his gaming console. I shoved my phone into my pocket, trying to suppress the unease tightening in my stomach. "I'm on my way, Lucas. Remember, during a tournament, troubleshoot first, panic later." The rest of the day passed in a blur of technical glitches and intense coaching sessions. By closing time, I had 3 missed calls from Dad and another text. "This is important, Anna. Don't avoid it like last time." That evening, I sat cross-legged on the couch, staring at my phone while my boyfriend, Ethan, cooked dinner in our small kitchen. "You're doing that thing again," he said, stirring a pot of something delicious smelling. "The thing where you overthink until your brain explodes." "I'm not overthinking," I retorted, but his knowing look stopped me. "Fine, I am. But my dad never summons us for a family announcement like this. Something's definitely up." "Maybe Dawn finally learned to tie her shoes without help," Ethan joked, but his smile faded when I didn't laugh. "Sorry, too far." I sighed, recalling the last time I saw my half-sister. That entire evening, she had made snide remarks about my small gaming club, mocking how great it was that I got to play with other people's kids since I couldn't have any of my own. Her words still stung. "I should go," I finally said, if only to keep Dad from sending a search and rescue team to drag me home. The drive back to my childhood home that weekend felt longer than usual. Every landmark along the way triggered memories of my childhood after Mom died, of my grandma Elaine caring for me while Dad was deployed in the military, of Dawn's arrival when I was 12, and Linda's relentless efforts to reshape our family into her version of perfection. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Dawn's brand new Mercedes parked in what used to be my spot. "Of course." Dad opened the door before I could knock. "You're late." "Good to see you too, Dad," I said, accepting his awkward hug. He still smelled the same Old Spice and coffee. Some things never change. The living room was exactly as I remembered, right down to the family photos on the walls. My chest tightened when I noticed Grandma Elaine's portrait had been moved to a less prominent spot. Dawn sat in Grandma's old armchair as if it were her throne. Linda perched smugly on the armrest beside her. "Now that everyone's here," Dad began, clearing his throat, "Dawn has some news to share." Dawn placed a hand on her stomach in a gesture that made me realize the awful truth before she even opened her mouth. "I'm pregnant," she announced, her smile sharp enough to cut. "You're going to be an aunt, Anna. Isn't that exciting? Now you'll finally get to enjoy having kids around, even if it's not the same as having your own." The room fell silent. I felt the familiar sting of tears, but swallowed them back. Dawn's words hung in the air like venom, perfectly calculated to hit my weakest spot. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We thought it would be best if you heard this news directly. Family first, right?" I forced a smile, though my hands clenched into fists. "Congratulations," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "If you'll excuse me, I need some fresh air." I stepped onto the porch, letting the cool breeze soothe the storm of emotions inside me. Through the open window, I heard Linda's voice. "She always makes such a big deal out of everything. Don't let her ruin your moment, Dawn." Leaning against the railing, I let the night air clear my head. Something shifted inside me, something hardened. This wasn't just about the baby. It was the culmination of years of cruel treatment, biting remarks, and a rivalry I never asked for. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Are you okay?" I wasn't okay, but I would be. For the first time in my life, I decided I wouldn't just endure. "Dad, Mom says you should grab another bottle of wine from the cellar. The good stuff, not the cheap kind Anna brought last time." I hadn't brought any wine last time. Dawn knew that perfectly well. "Sure thing, princess." Dad disappeared into the house, leaving me alone with my half-sister. Don's saccharine smile disappeared the moment he was out of earshot. You could at least pretend to be happy for me. I am happy for you, I lied, ecstatic. Really? Because you bolted out of the room pretty quickly after I shared my good news. I needed some air. No, you needed attention, she corrected, stepping closer. As usual. Poor Anna, who can't have kids, who can't stand it when someone else is the center of attention. My nails dug into my palms. You think this is about attention? I think it's all you've ever cared about, she shot back, her laugh as sharp as shattering glass. Jealous because I can have what you can't. Because I'm giving Dad his first grandchild. Because Mom loves me more. Linda is not my mom, I interrupted, and Grandma Elaine left this house to me. Dawn froze. What? I hadn't meant to say it. The legal documents had only arrived last week, a final gift from Grandma Elaine, held in trust until I turned 28. I'd been waiting for the right time to tell them, but Dawn's arrogance had pushed me over the edge. This house belongs to me, I said, the words tasting like triumph. Grandma left it to me in her will. I'll take full ownership next month. Dawn's face drained of color. You're lying. Ask Dad. He's known about this for a while now. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. So maybe rethink your plans for hosting a baby shower here. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The screen door slammed open. Linda stood there, her face twisted with anger. I heard everything, she hissed. How dare you? Dare to what? Inherit my grandmother's house. Dawn is pregnant. This is her moment, and you're ruining it with this petty power play. Linda. Dad appeared behind her, holding a bottle of wine. What's going on? Your daughter is trying to kick us out of the house. Linda snapped. I didn't say that, I countered, but Dawn had already started crying, clutching her stomach in exaggerated distress. She's trying to hurt my baby, Dawn sobbed. All this stress, it's too much. Dad glanced back and forth between us, clearly torn. Anna, maybe we can talk about this later. Of course, I said quietly. Go take care of your pregnant daughter, Dad. That's what you're best at. I walked to my car, ignoring Linda's continued accusations and Dad's feeble attempts to call me back. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Dawn in my rearview mirror. She wasn't crying anymore. Instead, her eyes glinted with calculation, just as they had when she announced her pregnancy. This wasn't over. We both knew that. But for the first time, I had something she wanted, and I intended to use it. 3 days later, the text that shattered me came from Sarah, the mother of one of my longest-standing students. She wanted to meet to discuss concerns about my program. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, assuming it was about tournament schedules or equipment fees. I was wrong. I've been hearing some troubling things, Sarah said, stirring her untouched latte. About your situation. My stomach dropped. My situation? Your sister, Dawn, has been reaching out to some of the parents, she said delicately. She suggested that your condition might affect your ability to connect with children. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She suggested we consider other programs, Sarah added. The noise of the coffee shop faded into a dull hum. Dawn wasn't just attacking me personally, she was going after my work, my students, everything I had built. The fact that I can't have kids has nothing to do with my ability to teach, I said, keeping my voice steady even as my hands shook. Lucas's tournament rankings have improved by 30% since he joined. I know, but what? Because Dawn is pregnant, she's suddenly an expert on children. Sarah fidgeted with her latte, clearly uncomfortable. She mentioned starting a program of her own for teens. A more traditional one. Less competitive. Of course. Dawn had never cared about gaming or coaching before, but now that she knew how much it mattered to me. I stood abruptly, nearly knocking over my chair. Excuse me, I need to make a call. Outside, I pressed my forehead against the cool brick wall and dialed Dawn's number. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. Well, hello, dear sister. Have you recovered from the shock about the house? Cut the act, I said through gritted teeth. I know what you're doing. Oh, do you? She replied, her tone dripping with mockery. From where I'm sitting, I'm just looking out for the kids' best interests. After all, what would Grandma Elaine think of you using her house to run a business, teaching kids to waste their lives on video games? Don't you dare bring Grandma into this, I growled. Why not? She's the reason you think you're better than everyone else. Perfect Anna Grace, Grandma's favorite. And now what? Too good for family because you have your precious inheritance. Is that what this is about? You're sabotaging my work because you're jealous of a house. Dawn laughed, cold and bitter. I'm just protecting vulnerable children from someone who doesn't understand what being a mother truly means. You should be thanking me, really. Now you don't have to pretend anymore. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. My phone buzzed immediately with a text from Dawn. Oh, by the way, I've already got 5 parents from your program interested in my new one. Funny how quickly people change their minds when they learn the truth about you. I leaned against the wall, fighting back tears. Years of building trust with these families, and Dawn was tearing it all down with a few calculated words. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. You okay? Your afternoon class is about to start. Class? I'd almost forgotten. 16s were waiting to learn advanced strategies, kids who believed in me, who had grown under my guidance, regardless of my situation. I straightened up, wiping my eyes. If Dawn wanted to play dirty, fine. But she'd forgotten one important thing. I'd learned strategy from the best. And Grandma Elaine hadn't just left me a house, she'd left me her entire collection of games, including her tournament journals spanning decades. I texted Ethan back, I'm fine. Remember that charity tournament we talked about? The one you said was too ambitious? Change of plans. Can you set up a live stream event? Call your programmer friends. You sure? What's your angle? I smiled, thinking of Dawn's smug face as she assumed she'd won. I was about to teach my sister a lesson about gaming, family, and why you should never underestimate someone just because they can't have kids. That night, the adoption brochure spilled out onto the kitchen counter as I cleared up after dinner. Ethan had hidden them under a stack of gaming magazines, but now they were exposed, full of glossy pictures of smiling families and promises of fresh starts. I was going to bring it up differently, Ethan said from the doorway, making me jump. Maybe over dinner with some wine. Or after the charity tournament. I picked up one of the brochures. How long have you been thinking about this? Since before Dawn's announcement, he admitted, stepping closer cautiously, as if I might bolt. I know the timing feels reactionary, but what? You think now is the perfect time? I snapped. When my sister is trying to destroy everything I've built because she thinks I'm unfit to be around kids, that's exactly why we should consider it, Ethan said. To prove her wrong. To show everyone that family isn't about biology or flashy announcements. It's about love and choice. My phone buzzed, another parent withdrawing from the program. The third that week. Dawn will weaponize this, I said quietly. She'll say we're only doing it to compete with her pregnancy. To steal the spotlight. Since when do you care what Dawn thinks? Ethan asked. Since she started poisoning my entire life, I snapped. She's turning the parents, my students, even Dad, against me. And now you want to add the scrutiny of adoption into the mix? I want to build a future with you, he said firmly. One that isn't defined by what Dawn does or doesn't do. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Dad. Dawn had complications. Doctor has advised rest. She'll be staying at the house. Thought you should know. Of course, she's staying at the house. My house. The house Grandma left to me. She's moved in. Ethan asked. Yes, I said, showing him the message. She's actually moved into the house before I've even taken ownership. Can she do that? Dad is still the executor of the will until my birthday next month. He can let anyone stay there. I let out a hollow laugh. Want to bet that by the time I get the keys, my old room will be a nursery? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Maybe we should move. What? After the tournament. After you officially get the house. We could sell it, move somewhere Dawn can't reach us, and start fresh. Maybe even explore adoption centers in another state. Run away, you mean? I asked, staring at the brochures, their perfect families smiling back at me. Let Dawn win. Let her have a hollow victory, Ethan said. While we build something real. I stared at my phone, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I typed a response to Ethan. You're right. Time to change the game. Dad's next text arrived while I was staring at the adoption flyer again. Karen is hosting a baby shower at the house next week. Dawn really wants you there. Don't make things harder than they need to be. I studied the photo on the flyer. A young couple playing with their adopted daughter, their faces glowing with genuine joy. Not forced smiles, not calculated performances, just family. Grandma always said this house was meant to be a home, I said slowly, not a weapon. What are you thinking? Ethan asked, his eyes searching mine. I'm thinking it's time to change the game. I opened the charity tournament plan we had been working on. What if we went bigger? Not just gaming, a community event. Something that supports adoption and foster care organizations. Turn Dawn's tactics against her? No, I replied, feeling a sense of clarity for the first time in weeks. Use Grandma's strategy. She always said the best way to win wasn't to destroy others, but to build something so beautiful no one could ignore it. Ethan smiled. I love this look in your eyes. So, what's the first move? I picked up my phone, ignoring Dad's message, and instead drafted an announcement to all the parents of my remaining students. An invitation to a special meeting. It was time to show everyone what my program and my vision was really about. Dawn wanted war? I'd give her something better, hope. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find some hope for myself along the way. The lawyer's office was cramped and stifling. Dad sat between Dawn and me, while Linda hovered protectively behind her daughter. The inheritance documents lay untouched on Mr. Peterson's desk, but today, that wasn't the focus. Let me get this straight. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses, his voice measured. Miss Anna, you're requesting early transfer of ownership due to unauthorized alterations? I placed my phone on the table and hit play on a video that one of my students' parents, Sarah, had sent me the day before. In the footage, Linda was directing workers as they hauled Grandma Elaine's antique furniture onto a moving truck. They're dismantling my grandmother's house, I said. Without permission. We're just preparing the nursery, Linda interjected. Richard agreed. Dad shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know they were taking Grandma's things. Of course, you didn't. My voice dripped with bitterness, surprising even myself. You never notice anything when it comes to Dawn. Dawn placed a hand on her stomach, her expression a picture of wounded innocence. The doctor said stress isn't good for the baby, and those old things are covered in dust. Those old things are my heritage, I said, my voice breaking. Every piece in that house tells a story. Babies don't need stories, Dawn said softly, her eyes glinting with fake concern. But I understand why you're clinging to them. It must be hard knowing you'll never have a family of your own to pass them on to. The room fell silent. Even Linda looked shocked by her daughter's cruelty. Miss Anna, Mr. Peterson spoke up, breaking the silence. Legally, until your 28th birthday next month, your father retains control of the will. However, given the circumstances. My phone buzzed, another text from Ethan. Local news picked up the charity tournament. They want to interview you about combining gaming with adoption awareness. An idea sparked in my mind. I have a proposal, I said, sitting up straighter. Dad, you want peace in the family. Dawn, you want a nursery. Fine. Keep the house for now. Dawn's victorious smile lasted all of 3 seconds. But next week, I'll be hosting a charity event there, I continued. A major media-covered event to promote adoption and foster care support. After all, I looked directly at Dawn. The house still belongs to Dad, and he's always taught us to give back to the community. Right, Dad? Dad straightened, his military demeanor returning as it always did when cornered. That sounds reasonable. You can't be serious. Linda sputtered. Dawn needs rest, not a circus of gaming in her backyard. The event will be held outside, I said. Dawn can rest upstairs. Unless, of course, there's some reason you don't want the community to see the house. Dawn's face turned pale. She understood exactly what I was implying. If they refused, people would start asking questions, especially after the rumors she'd been spreading about me. I think it's a wonderful idea, Mr. Peterson said, clearly enjoying the drama. Very much in line with Elaine's charitable spirit. Fine, Dawn snapped. Have your little event. But don't think this changes anything. This house will never truly be yours. You'll never fill it with a family like I will. I stood, gathering my things. You know what, Dawn? You're right. I won't fill the house with a family. Because family isn't about filling space. It's about building connections. Something Grandma tried to teach us both. Too bad only one of us was listening. As I left, Dad called after me, Anna, wait. The event team will arrive on Monday to set up, I said without turning back. Try not to clear out any more of Grandma's belongings before then. Outside, my hands shook as I texted Ethan, it's done. Plan B is a go. His response was immediate. You sure? Once we start. Positive. It was time to play the long game. Linda's voice was sharp as she followed me out, calling after me, but I didn't look back. Instead, I gripped my phone tighter and started preparing for what was coming next. Dawn might have thought she'd backed me into a corner, but she didn't understand one crucial thing. I wasn't playing her game. I was playing Grandma Elaine's. The week of the charity tournament arrived, and with it, a surge of energy I hadn't felt in months. Ethan and I worked late into the night, coordinating with volunteers, setting up gaming stations in the backyard, and decorating the house with banners supporting adoption and foster care organizations. By the time the event began, the house was alive with laughter, chatter, and the buzz of excitement. Dawn didn't make an appearance. Linda was noticeably absent too, though I suspected she was still seething about her ruined nursery plans. Dad wandered through the crowd, clearly unsure of his role but too proud to admit it. The event itself was a success. The gaming tournament attracted teens and families from all over the community. Reporters interviewed me about the importance of creating inclusive spaces for kids, biological or otherwise. I saw some parents who had pulled their kids from my program lingering on the sidelines, watching with interest. And the students still with me? They shone, showcasing their skills and teamwork in ways that made me proud. Toward the end of the day, as the crowd began to thin, I spotted Dad standing near one of Grandma Elaine's rose bushes. He had a distant look in his eyes, one hand trailing over the delicate petals. I didn't realize these were still here, he said as I approached. Of course they are, I replied. Grandma planted them herself. I wasn't about to let them go. She loved this house, he said, his voice softer now. She loved what it stood for. I nodded. She believed in building something that lasts, something that matters. He looked at me then, his face lined with regret. I'm sorry, Anna. I let too much slip away. I let people take things that didn't belong to them. I didn't respond right away, unsure of what to say. Finally, I offered, it's not too late to change that. A few weeks later, the official transfer of the house to my name was complete. Dawn had remained conspicuously silent since the tournament, though I'd heard through the grapevine that she and Linda had left town for a fresh start. Maybe they thought distance would make it easier to pretend the house had never been theirs. I'd started making changes to the house, not to erase its past, but to honor it. Grandma Elaine's antique furniture stayed, carefully arranged to complement the new gaming stations and workspaces I'd set up for the program. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was becoming a community hub, a place where kids could learn, grow, and feel like they belonged. One day, as I was setting up for a special after-school session, Ethan called me to the living room. You've got a visitor, he said, nodding toward the front door. To my surprise, it was Dawn. She looked different, smaller, less sure of herself. Her hands rested protectively on her now noticeably swollen belly. I didn't think you'd actually let me in, she said cautiously. I didn't think you'd actually come, I replied, equally wary. Dawn stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room. She didn't say anything about the changes I'd made, but I could see her taking it all in. Finally, she turned to face me. I'm not here to fight, she said. I wanted to see it for myself. What you're building here. Her words caught me off guard. Why? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I wanted to understand why Grandma gave it to you and not me. Or maybe she trailed off, looking down at her hands. I don't want my daughter to grow up thinking family is about who wins and who loses. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. Family isn't about winning or losing, I said. It's about growing. Sometimes together, sometimes apart. Dawn nodded slowly. I know I can't undo everything I've done. And I'm not asking you to forgive me. But I hope we can at least figure out how to stop hurting each other. For a moment, we stood there in silence. Then I nodded. It's a start. She smiled faintly, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her in years. The roses look good, she said softly, glancing out the window at Grandma Elaine's garden. You've been taking care of them. Of course, I said. Grandma taught me how. Dawn lingered for a moment longer, then turned to leave. I watched her go, unsure of how to feel but knowing that something had shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something close to understanding. 6 months later, I stood in what used to be Grandma Elaine's study, now my office, as the setting sun cast golden light across the room. The house felt alive again, full of energy and purpose. My students' gaming program had grown beyond what I'd ever imagined, now offering scholarships and mentorship opportunities thanks to a charitable fund established in Grandma's name. That afternoon, I watched as a group of teens played on the backyard gaming stations, their laughter echoing through the air. Ethan was outside with them, helping set up for an end-of-season celebration. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from Dawn. She's here. Baby Grace was born last night. She's beautiful. For the first time in a long time, I smiled when I thought of Dawn. Maybe the rivalry wasn't over, but the war was. And for once, it felt like there was room for both of us to grow on our own terms. As the evening settled in, I stepped outside to join the celebration. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of Grandma Elaine's roses. This house, this legacy, had become what it was always meant to be, a place of connection, growth, and hope. Family, I'd learned, wasn't about bloodlines or legal documents. It was about choice. It was about the love you build, even in the hardest of times. And as I looked around at the people who had become my family, I knew I'd made the right one.